Hello, everybody. So what I want to talk about is the future of education. But as John mentioned, I was a speechwriter for the president, and up until just about a year ago, actually. And I was with him for 4.5 years. I started with him. I was the second speechwriter hired in March of 2007, and it was an extraordinary job. I wrote the whole thing all the way through, the campaign all the way into the White House, a couple years in the White House. And so after about 4.5 years in the White House and on the campaign, I decided I wanted to get closer to the point of action. I loved writing, but I wanted to help enact the words that I was writing. And I worked on a lot of education speeches with the president. So I decided I want to get involved in education. And just around that time, the administration was launching something called Digital Promise. And Digital Promise was actually authorized by Congress under President Bush and then launched by the Obama administration, which may make it the last act of bipartisanship in Washington before the whole place went to hell. It was chartered by Congress as the National Center for Research in Advanced Information and Digital Technologies, which is also the kind of name you get when you're created by Congress. So we called it Digital Promise for short. And it was started to spur innovation in education. And so when I took on this job, we started thinking about, well, where do we stand in this country in education? Started thinking about the speeches I'd worked on with the president, about how 30 million new jobs being created by 2018 are going to require some college education, about how only 40% of Americans aged 25 to 34 have a higher education. So we started thinking about these challenges and what we could do. And we started looking at some of the approaches. And obviously a slew of approaches have been tried when it comes to education in recent decades. And in fact, just across the river at Harvard, there's an economist named Roland Fryer who's looked at a lot of the approaches that conventional wisdom would suggest would work. Smaller class sizes, teachers with master's degrees, things you think would work, that at scale have not made as big a difference. So what I would suggest here is that technology can make a major difference here. Now, I want to say at the outset that I'm actually a skeptic when it comes to technology, and it is by no means a silver bullet or a panacea. One of my favorite quotes on this comes from Edison about how he thought that the phonograph might make textbooks obsolete. And so that kind of hype has been going on for some time. So I'm a skeptic. But I've also been to some of these places and heard from some of the educators who are working with this stuff. You can see the potential. And the potential is actually not about the technology. It's about the learning environment that the technology enables. It's about being able to empower teachers, students, parents with real-time data, with real-time access to information about how a kid is doing. And you can see, not just at the end of a term, at the end of the year on a state test, where someone stands. You can get access on a weekly, daily, hourly basis to information about who's moving forward, who's fallen short. And then you can help intervene before it's too late for kids. And it has a way of transforming these classrooms so that you can personalize learning in a way that's never been possible before. You can intervene for an individual student before it's too late. And I've seen this happen in a bunch of these classrooms, and it's inspired me. And so the question is not sort of whether this is happening in certain places, because as I say it is, the question is how do you scale this up? How do you expand this kind of personalized learning and build bridges across the islands of innovation that exist in this country? And so what I would suggest are that there are three main challenges to doing that. The first is challenge of research. Education technology is a new frontier. And like any new frontier, there are pioneers and there are hucksters, and it's often very hard to tell the difference. So that's one challenge. So what we need to do is we need better, faster, cheaper research, just like they do at Google and Amazon, get rapid A/B testing, figure out what's working for what kind of kids under what kind of circumstances. That's the first thing we need. The second thing is around the market. Right now, it is very hard for an entrepreneur to break into the K-12 market. So part of the problem is that if you're a school district, which are some of the big purchasers of this stuff, they often don't have the information they need to be to be making smart decisions about what kind of digital tools they buy. So a whole host of market failures. Districts not knowing what to buy, so they don't buy anything, buying the wrong things. Entrepreneurs not being able to break in because the market is sort of being overtaken by some of the bigger companies. So a whole range of market failures make this a challenge. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, even if you know what works, even if you know and can buy what you need, it's hard to implement it. So that's the third thing we need to do, is figure out, well, you know, what are the supports that teachers need, that classrooms need, that schools need in order to implement this stuff in the way that works. Because we know that sophisticated technologies that are implemented poorly won't make any difference, whereas even ones that are unsophisticated, if they're implemented in certain circumstances, can actually deliver some better results. So we took some of this information and we said, well, what can we do about this? And so what we've done over the past year is the following. We've built something called the Digital Promise League of Innovative Schools. And this is a national coalition of 28 school districts in 18 states that serve 2.5 million kids. These are big districts like New York City and Houston and District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. There are rural districts in Alabama where kids don't have running water. There are border towns in Texas, communities in Michigan where they're serving auto communities and Iraqi refugees. These are districts where America's kids go to school. There are some charters, but by and large, we wanted to focus in traditional public school districts because that's where upwards of 90% of our kids go to school. So what are they doing? They're coming together. They've signed a charter of innovation, and they've committed to working with entrepreneurs, researchers, and one another to demonstrate, evaluate, and scale up what works. And so that's what we're doing. We've generated these partnerships in districts, between districts, entrepreneurs, and researchers. And in Michigan, they're developing a personalized blended model that's personalizing learning for kindergartners. In Piedmont, Alabama, we're taking new approaches to curb the summer learning loss using technology-based learning. In Idaho, the largest district in Idaho, they're redesigning several classrooms as models of 21st century learning. And not just doing these, but we're pairing them with researchers. So in Alabama, we're pairing them with the University of Chicago and University of Washington. In Idaho, pairing them with Northwestern, because we want to figure out what works. But the key of this is not just one-offs in individual districts, it's actually leveraging the power of the whole group. So we're trying to do a whole bunch of things across the districts. You know, we're doing multi-district research projects with folks at Harvard, with companies like Pearson, to figure out what are the most effective teacher practices when it comes to these digitally rich classroom environments. We need to, as Wayne Gretzky said, we need to figure out where the puck's going to be, not where it is right now. And so we're trying to figure out what are the most effective teaching practices in digitally rich blended learning environments. And so we're doing that in multiple league districts. We're doing multi-district evaluations of Khan Academy, Dreambox Learning, other innovative digital tools that are being used to try and accelerate that rapid, better research that I've been talking about. And that's the power of the group. What we want to do is create this community of practice across public school districts where we can share information across districts about what's working and what's not so we can scale it up. And we're getting some pretty remarkable results. We've had superintendents tell us that based on what they've learned through the league, they're rewriting their entire strategic plan for their district. We've had district leaders tell us that they're feeling burnt out in their jobs until they came and joined our group and learned from one another, and now they're feeling reinvigorated. We've had district leaders tell us that they leave our group with a sense of possibility, and it's really inspiring to see. We've even gotten actually started getting emails from parents who are asking who the members of our league are, because they want to send their kids to one of our schools. So it has been really inspiring to see. There's nothing like it, and what we're hoping to do is incubate a national movement for innovation in public education. That's our ambition. And we're, idealistic about it. When I left the White House, people would ask me, they'd say, are you cynical now? You worked in politics for a while. You're in the White House, pretty cynical place, isn't it? They'd ask, and there's plenty of reason to be skeptical and cynical, especially in Washington. But the truth is, I left that whole thing even more idealistic, and here's why. Even now, even when there is such polarization in Washington, even now, look at all the stuff that the administration got done in the first 4 years. You think about healthcare, you think about saving an auto industry, you think about equal pay for equal work, you think about ending wars. You think about the extraordinary education reforms that have gotten done, even in what is arguably the most inhospitable political climate in a generation. And that was inspiring to me. And it reinforced my idealism. And that's the same idealism we're trying to take to our work with Digital Promise. So thank you, everybody.